Hey there, good to see you. In this guitar lesson, I'm going to teach you how to change between guitar chords smoothly. You might be a new guitar player, maybe you've been playing for a while, but you're just having some trouble making the chord changes smooth. If that's the case, then this lesson is going to be great for you. This is definitely one of those things that a lot of guitar players have trouble with, but don't feel bad because you're not alone. We're going to take a look at a few key ingredients to get your chord transitions smooth. We'll look at technique, knowing your chords, and then chord transitions. So here we go. Let's start with proper technique. So some of these might seem basic to you, but it's really good just to cover these just to make sure that that you've got proper technique, that you're holding the guitar properly and that you're placing your fingers in the right places, because that's really going to help you in terms of getting those smooth transitions. So a couple things just to be mindful of is just to make sure that you're keeping your elbow in. Sometimes what happens if we hold our elbow out like that, it's going to make playing our chords a lot harder and just playing in general, and it'll sort of add extra stress or tension that you don't really need. So keep your elbow in. And then when you're placing your hand around the neck of the guitar, it's almost as if you're holding a tennis ball or something where it's got feels like it's got a curve to it, so that your fingers are nice and round when you're placing your fingers on the strings and on the frets. That it's nice and round, a nice and round shape. That it's not, your hand's not out like this, where you're adding stress or tension to your forearm area. What you want to do is just make sure that you've got a nice curve, nice bend for your fingers, and that you're placing your wrist in a proper position as well, so that you're not adding extra tension. Anything, it's just going to hurt eventually, and you don't want that. There already is some discomfort just kind of, with your fingers pressing down on the fret, so you don't need any extra added tension. So keep your elbow in, make sure your fingers are nice and round, and when you're placing your fingers on the frets, you want to make sure you get nice and close to the fret. Without going over or without touching. You want to go right up beside it, just so that we're getting those nice, clean sounding notes. All right, so let's look at the next key ingredient, and that's knowing your chord shapes really well before you're attempting chord changes. So what you want to do is remember how the shape feels. These are a couple tips just to really help you memorize and remember where your fingers are going. So when you're placing your fingers on a particular chord, right now I'm going to use the D as an example, you want to remember that position, that shape, how it feels, and then take your hand off, put your fingers back on, and get used to these shapes and these positions and just knowing what they look like. For instance, with the D chord, I think of the D as a triangle. When you just kind of look at the shape, to me it looks like a triangle, so I use that to help me remember that chord. So again, just try different chords and just try to remember the shape and how it feels. A big part of playing guitar is muscle memory. So it's trying it over and over again until you get to the point where you know exactly the shape that your fingers need to go into. And one thing I find really helpful is just visualizing the chord. So especially if you're playing a song and you're changing chords, you want to sort of anticipate the chord that's coming up. So visualize, how does the chord look? How does the chord feel? And then by the time you get there, you've already kind of worked it out, so that you're not surprised when that chord shows up, and then all of a sudden you got to think, okay, how does this chord look? What fingers am I using? But you want to try to visualize and remember the feel of the chords. All right, the last thing that I want to talk about is changing chords now. So going from one chord to another. One exercise that I find really helpful is an exercise called 1-minute changes, and you may have heard me talk about that before. Basically what it is you're just taking two chords and you're going to switch back and forth between those two chords in under a minute. So let's say you're going to take the D chord and the G chord, you're really working on those ones. what you want to do is set a timer, 1 minute, and you're going to try to change chords, change between the two that you're working on, and see how many chord changes you get in 1 minute. So let's say we've got the D and the G. Every time we're going to start the timer, and then every time we change chords, we're going to count. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then so you do that, let's say you get 25 changes in a minute. What you're going to do is you're going to try that exercise again, and you'll try to beat your score of 25. Now, it doesn't always have to be a game, or it can be something where you're just sitting on the couch. You don't even have to be making any sounds. You don't have to strum it. Really, the point is to get your fretting hand used to making these changes. Again, a lot of it is just muscle memory. So going back and forth between the two chords. Or if you're working on something different, if you're working on bar chords, you could do that same thing. Just take any two chords that you're working on and try to change back and forth between those two chords as many times as you can. And you'll find that it really does help make your chord changes smoother. You get there faster. And when you're working on stuff like proper technique and making sure that you're getting the nice clean sounding notes, then everything is going to start working together when you put all these ingredients together. Okay, I hope that helps. It really does take all these ingredients working together to get the outcome you're looking for, which is smoother chord changes. Work on that during your practice time, and I'll see you soon for another lesson.